Yeah, hey guys, Paul DeRocher coming to you live this morning, bright and early from the studio. So excited to be here, man. Just look at the beauty of this day. I mean, it is absolutely gorgeous. 26 degrees below zero out. But you know what? It is pretty out there. Look at that. So excited to share with you something of God's Word, so come along with me. Looking forward to hanging out with you guys and sharing some cool stuff from God's Word. We've been talking about journaling, the importance of journaling, and the benefits that we can derive from meditating on God's Word. And I want to share a few things today from Nehemiah Chapter 2 about the importance of place and how God does a work in our lives as God worked in the life of Nehemiah. Verse 3 says this, and I can't give you all the context because I want to keep these things brief, but Nehemiah is before the king, and the king notices that his face is sad, and so the king said to me, I'm reading verse 2 of Nehemiah, the king said to me, "Why is your face sad, though you are not sick? This is nothing but sadness of heart." Then I was very much afraid. It's kind of interesting. The king notices Nehemiah here in his presence, that he's sad, and then I said to the king, "Let the king live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city, the place of my father's tombs, lies desolate, and its gates have been consumed by fire?" I thought about that. I meditated upon that today, and some interesting observations came out of that. First of all, thing that really struck me is, what is it that made Nehemiah so sad? The first thing he says, the place of my father's tombs. God has created in us a desire for place. You know, the first prerequisite, or the first thing that God placed upon man as a result of his sin, was that he removed him from his place, took him out of the garden, and removed him from that place of comfort, that place of security, that place that was home to him, stationed a guard over the door of the entrance to the Garden of Eden, as Genesis 3 records for us that actual historical, factual detail, in case you were wondering. Just giving a little bit of my presuppositions there. But the place of my father's tombs. Place is hugely important. Was to Nehemiah. Here he was, far away in a different place, and he was thinking about his homeland. And, if I were far away thinking about my homeland, the first thing I wouldn't think about is the place of my father's tombs. That's kind of interesting. We hardly give credence whatsoever today to where people are buried. The place of their grave sites isn't very significant to us. Some cultures take that very seriously. They venerate the dead. They honor the dead. But, we're living in a day and age where people don't really have a sense of history. They don't have a sense of their own history. They don't have a sense of national history. And we're basically, this millennial generation is kind of locked into this, hey, sort of what's in it for me mentality in some respects. We live in the moment, don't we? We don't build monuments to the past anymore. In fact, we're in a day and age where we're tearing down the monuments of the past, where we're rewriting history. We're rethinking what history means. And so this is really significant. The place of my father's tombs. But not only was the place significant, why was the place significant? Why were the father's tombs significant? Well, I think they were significant because the God of the Bible, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they were the fathers, God showed up to them. He revealed himself to them. He came and met with them and told them, hey, I'm going to do certain things, and these certain things are going to involve you, your family, your descendants, and a place where I'm going to choose my name to dwell. And that place was Jerusalem. And that's what he's talking about here, this place of my father's tombs. It lies desolate, and its gates have been consumed with fire. So super important here. We also see the emotional makeup of Nehemiah. He's kind of broken about this. He's kind of inner turmoil. He's kind of trashed about it. He's kind of mad. He's angry. He's upset. He's depressed. He's broken. And, I think it's kind of interesting because we know the story that God is trying to get a hold of Nehemiah. He's getting a hold of his heart, isn't he? And he's going to make Nehemiah become a national hero. He's going to accomplish something great as he moves out into his world to accomplish something for God. And so what do we see happening here is that when God uses a man, he gets a hold of his heart, doesn't he? He gets a hold of his heart, and he kind of turns his inner world upside down. And that's what's taking place here in the life of Nehemiah. I think of Martin Luther. Martin Luther was another such guy that God just really used. In fact, it's the 500th anniversary of the Reformation, and I was able to go to Coburg, Germany, back in the day, and stand above the chair where Martin Luther sat in the Coburg Castle and looked out where he was there in exile and receiving asylum from the king there, the Prussian king that gave him asylum there in Coburg. But Martin Luther was a man of great passions. In fact, it was even said that he was a man who was like a wild boar set loose in the vineyard of the Lord. Martin Luther said when a man got angry, he could accomplish just about anything. And now I'm not advocating anger or that we have to be angry, but I think the point is that we become a little emotionally disturbed. We need to be touched at the emotional level in order to be able to do something and accomplish something for the Lord. It has to be more than just an intellectual curiosity about something. We need to want to see a need and want to meet that need. And so I think this is very, very true in our lives. And so I ask you today, as you come up on these last few days of 2017 and looking into 2018 and even our world that we live in, look out. What are you a little moved about? What do you get excited about? What are you passionate about? God was stirring the heart of Nehemiah. He sat for days in brokenness, and he thought about this a lot. And out of that inner, moving of his spirit came specific steps of action. And when the king finally asked him, hey, well, what do you want me to do? He said, he prayed was the first thing he did, which is a whole nother thing we could talk about, but we won't today. But he had a plan, and that plan came out of that emotional mix. And so I just wanted to put these things out here to think about, the importance of place and the importance of our perspective in history. Nehemiah was on a path of history, a path that involved his forefathers and God speaking to them. There was a time of exile. They were exiled. They were separated from that sweet spot that God would have them in. And now they were getting back on track in that sort of sweet spot of building and restoring what had been lost through years of exile. And they were moving forward to the rebuilding of another temple and some things that were going to happen in the future, namely the coming of Messiah. And so I ask you, do you have a sense of your history, of where you've come from, where you are, and where you're going? Hugely important to know what it is that God is calling us to do, wanting us to be involved in. And so wanted to put these things out here. As I think about my own family, my mom just sold our homestead, our childhood home that we were born and raised in. And I got to tell you, there was a sense of sadness that came over me when the house I was born and raised in, my mom lived in it for over 50 years. She sold that. And the memories that we made in that place. And a little part of me was attached to that place. That's why I take a moment to sort of share with you a little bit of my surroundings and my place here. Place is hugely important. God's wired us that way. Places are we remember places we've gone on vacation. Significant milestones in our lives are tied to place. And here Nehemiah was greatly moved in that whole realm. So wanted to put that out there and just remind you about that and think about what God is calling you to do, what He's done in your life, what He's done in your past, those significant places in your life, and what they mean to you, what they mean to your children, to your grandchildren. This was significant, like I said, because of the revelation that was made to the grandfathers. God's revealed Himself to me. I want to pass that on to my children, to my children's children. I think of my own grandfather. I think of his grave there in New England. And my grandmother, it's really not high on my priority to go back and to visit that. I don't wake up in the morning and think, I wish I could be at my grandparents' grave. I wish I could be back in that place where they lived. Why? Because there was no major significant revelation of God that came through them and through that situation and through those people. I yearn for and long for that moving of God in my own life. And so there's other places I'd go. I'd go to an oak tree in the front yard where I would sit and pray as a young man, and where I met God as a young man. That to me is a hallowed place. And so just want to challenge you to think about those places in your life. Think about what's moving you. Think about where you are in your spiritual journey. And I hope you're enjoying the journey. God bless you in 2018. Thanks for taking a minute and sharing this time with me. God bless. Bye.
Lord, won't you lead us, prepare our hearts.